So now we're going to invite our 3 less young luminaries to come on stage and have a conversation about youth leadership. Take a seat anywhere. Yeah. I'll sit here. So I'm really happy to have 3 truly global leaders in this space on stage. We have Ahsan Jamil. Ahsan is the CEO of the Aman Foundation in Pakistan. They're focused on systemic change in health, education, and nutrition. And one of the programs we're most interested in hearing about today is focused on vocational skills and training for youth in Pakistan. We have Fred Swaniker, the chairman and founder of African Leadership Academy, which we've heard about already today. He was ranked among the top 10 young power men in Africa by Forbes magazine. And he has been leading a quiet revolution, grooming the next generation of Africa's Nobel Prize winners, policymakers, and entrepreneurs. He has an MBA from Stanford Business School and worked at McKinsey before he embarked on this journey. He was selected as an Echoing Green Fellow almost 10 years ago, and since then an Aspen and TED and every other kind of fellow too. So it's great to have Fred here. And Pamela Hartigan, of course, many of you know already. She is our tireless and fantastic host in Oxford this week. She's director of the Skoll Centre for Social Entrepreneurship at Said Business School. In that endeavor and her previous work, setting the strategic orientation and mission for the Schwab Foundation since its inception, really. She's widely recognized as a global leader in social entrepreneurship, so it's great to have her perspective represented too. Thanks for being here. So Fred, let's start with you since we met Joseph. What is it that is happening at African Leadership Academy that gives us Joseph and makes people believe that they can change their continent even if they're from rural Ghana?
Well, Joseph said everything there was to say. Basically, what we believe at the Academy is that a lot of people who change the world start young. So if you think about Martin Luther King got the Nobel Prize when he was 35. So that means he started his activism pretty early. Nelson Mandela was 21 when he got involved in the ANC Youth League. Mark Zuckerberg, 17. Malala, exactly. So, and what I believe often happens with these 3 people is that, in creating these people, is that 3 things come together. One is you have someone who has potential. They get the opportunity to practice leadership from a fairly early age. And the third is someone gives them an opportunity. But very often this thing happens by chance. And there's too much luck in the process. And what we try to do with the Academy is to bring some more structure and actually create a systematic way of bringing those 3 things together. So we find young people with potential that we think have to become leaders. We give them systematic practice in leadership through as much experience as possible, real hands-on. We don't teach them leadership in a theoretical sense, as Joseph mentioned. And then we give them opportunity by plugging them into networks. Because no matter how talented you are, no matter what your skills are, if you don't have access to the right mentors, you don't have access to the right partners, you don't have people who can invest in you, you won't be able to take the skills that you have and actually scale them up. So we basically try to create a cauldron where we put all these 3 ingredients in, and then we let the magic happen, and then thousands of leaders like Joseph are going to come out.
Great. Pamela, can you remind everyone what the mission and approach is at the Skoll Centre?
Yeah, well, perhaps I should start by saying that it's very interesting to be an entrepreneur within an 800-year-old university. When I first came to Oxford 4.5 years ago, I remember somebody telling me, have you heard the Oxford joke? And I was like, no, yeah. How many Oxford dawns does it take to change a light bulb? And the response was, change? So with that, I sort of, held my breath and thought, well, this is a very interesting challenge here for somebody who is about systemic change. I think that what the Skoll Centre is trying to do within the business school and throughout Oxford, let's start with the business school. We have the opportunity to actually bring these two worlds together, which is we have always separated, this is where I make my money and this is where I do good. And those two things absolutely have to come together if we are actually going to survive on the planet and continue to have, you know, the kind of life that we want for our children, our grandchildren, etc. So our entire focus is on really building business leaders and leaders across Oxford who are going to really look at the world not through the separation, but to bring all of those pieces together. The Skoll Centre basically has 3 pillars that it works on. It's nurturing leadership and opportunity. The next one is, we don't call it research, we call it producing actionable insight, very much like what we heard in terms of, you know, how you link research with HIV and have actionable insight that people can actually use. And the last one is, of course, things like this, where we have the opportunity to share knowledge, vision, passion, and opportunities with one another. So that's really what we do. I've got to tell you that it has been a fantastic 4.5 years from the point of view of really having the space to be entrepreneurial within an old university. The great thing is, it's so chaotic here that nobody tells you what to do. So you can pretty much do whatever you want.
So Pamela, I want to ask, we just heard from 4 incredible young people. I think everyone in this room wants them to succeed. From your perspective, what is the skill gap that usually prevents people from realizing their ambition? And how are you trying to address that at the Skoll Centre?
Actually, it's very similar to what Fred was talking about. You really do need the mentors. You need the opportunities. You need, and one of the things I think that, that especially when you come to Oxford, or especially when you come to the MBA, one of the things that I've learned about the way the MBA has been structured is that people come for a year because, well, certainly generally in MBAs, because they think, okay, this is going to open doors to other opportunities to pursue careers in the business space. And so the way the career system is structured is you can have investment banking or you can have consultancy. And all of a sudden we're seeing that completely shift and say, I don't want to go there really. There might be some, obviously, that still do, but they really want a completely different kind of frame. They want to work for, as I say, organizations that are fundamentally innovative, philosophically positive, and morally compelling. And so your careers office usually in the MBA programs don't offer those kinds of things. That, to me, is a huge gap within the kind of things that we provide. It's really where are those new spaces where young people can really fulfill their dreams as well as pursue career opportunities that, that are going to, you know, give them a livelihood.
Thank you. Misan, your focus is actually very different from Pamela and Fred's, and you're trying to address the same challenge in Pakistan that Misan is working on in Nigeria. There's a big difference between developing world-class leaders and just making sure people have jobs. But one of the things that Misan talked about was how important soft skills are. Can you talk about vocational education and soft skills as it relates to your work?
Yeah, so firstly, it's really odd for me to be with the elders because I'm the youngest of 9, so I feel like I'm your age. Yeah, so Aman Tech, which is our vocational training institute in Karachi, has about 3,000 kids in there. And initially, when we started it 4 years ago, we took in kids that were from very humble backgrounds and were actually failing in the school system or were not being able to, do very much with their interest levels in school. So we took them in into a program which we took in the City and Guilds system of training, which is plumbing, air conditioning, refrigeration, welding, auto repair, et cetera, And so that was, and we said that we'll help them find jobs at the end of this international accreditation. So that attracted them in. And of course, in addition to the City and Guilds accredited program, we also taught them another language and we gave them computer skills. But what we also understood was that the mission is transforming lives. And yes, getting livelihood, getting skills, getting into the job market where you have demand-driven skills is very important. But the real focus for us was soft skills and is soft skills. And so I bring a mental health background to my work. And so we had mental health counselors in the Vocational Training Institute looking at soft skills and actually developing a curriculum that was relatable to the set of problems that these young kids had. And so, the soft skills program looks at how can we teach optimism? How do we look at building attitudes? How do we recognize what is energy-sapping behavior, what is energy-giving behavior? And ultimately, that attitude is the key thing that we wanted to build in these young, future workforce people. And one of the things that became a cornerstone of what we trained them for is that relationship building is fundamental, and the cornerstone for relationships is trust. So things like what is empathy, what is, how unconditional respect and regard is critical, and yet being authentic at the same time. So those three things actually are the cornerstone of a relationship, a working alliance, and teamwork, and what you use to build trust. And so these people, we prefer the one-year-long course because it gives us more time for this to sink in. But market requirements sometimes make us do 3-month, 6-month courses. So now what we're doing is putting it into the pedagogy of the instructor as opposed to having it just as a separate lab and a separate set of sessions. So to us, attitude is more important than the computer skills, how well they speak English. It's how they relate to people.
Thank you. So I said at the beginning that at Malaga we're obsessed with scale. And we do think context matters, and training future leaders is very different than delivering fertilizer or vaccinations. But I want to understand how all of you think about scale, but I think for Aman Foundation it is also different than it is for Pamela and Fred. So can you talk about scale? And I'll love you forever if you talk a little bit about cost. But we're all interested in how you're thinking about the scale of your program or how scale comes through the leaders you create.
Let me go?
Sure.
So yeah, I think for me, the way I think about scale is I really believe that we are creating the scale makers. If you create 6,000 people like Joseph and all his colleagues, and then they go out and this one tackles problems in healthcare, and this one tackles education, and this one tackles governance, and this, then they are creating and impacting the lives of millions of people through their work. So that for me is the one way in which we think about scale. We also think about scale in terms of spreading ideas. So we are hoping to, because what we do at the Academy is actually, we have a nice facility, but I always believe that great education and great development of people is not about the buildings you have, but it's really about your philosophy. And if you have a great curriculum, great philosophy, you have great students and you put great faculty together, you can have them under a tree and you'll have a great institution. So we hope that other institutions around Africa that have less resources than us can borrow ideas and that philosophy, and hopefully that's another way to think about scale. More recently as well, I've started thinking about how do we actually take some of the work we've been doing, and I think advances in technology are bringing about new ways of developing people. So because to create one of these young leaders, in our 2-year program, we spent $30,000, actually $35,000 per student per year. It's quite an expensive thing to do. It's difficult to scale that, especially as a nonprofit. So what I'm now doing is taking the model of in terms of how we develop leaders at the Academy, and we're going to do it at a much larger scale in tertiary institutions. And so starting something called the African Leadership University, where the idea is to build, the vision I have is to build 25 campuses across Africa, and each campus with 10,000 students. So we have about 250,000 at a time. With the same ethos and how do you train leaders and entrepreneurs and getting them to collaborate across countries, etc. And we believe we'll be able to do this at a cost of about $5,000 per year for both tuition and accommodation.
Great.
I think that one of the issues that comes up when you talk about scale is that we immediately think of the global company. And we sort of think our organizations need to become as big as ExxonMobil, Coca-Cola, et cetera. And we focus on scaling our organizations when what we really are doing is tackling issues. And in order to tackle those big issues, we can't possibly do it alone as a university, as any one of these academies. We need to form a movement around this, around the issue rather than the organization. I think that one of the things that we are very excited about, I keep telling the Skoll Foundation that the initial investment they made in the Skoll Centre was probably the best investment they ever made. Humble me. But the reason for that is because we actually operate on a very low budget. We support every year 5 full scholarships for social entrepreneurs who have actually started their organizations and have grown them, and who want to come to do an MBA to give them the increasing business tools that they're going to need to make sure that they can go out and create more organizations. But there's something really funny that happens with those 5. We now have a community of 52 Skoll scholars, and as I said on Monday evening, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of the Skoll Scholarship. They act as an infectious agent. It's an incredible virus that spreads throughout the university, which is an excitement around, I want to be part of this movement. And so when you look at it in terms of dollars and cents, we might be spending about £50,000 a year on each one of those individual scholars. But the multiplier effect of what they're doing for the thousands and thousands of students at Oxford is incredibly exciting. So for me, that is where we want to, look at scale. And the work that we do at the Skoll Centre with other universities and other learning institutions is also about joining up so that we can spread that virus, which is fortunately a virus for which there is no cure. Once you're infected, you're dead.
Thank you. And so, Ahsan, for you, scale is very different, but you said you're working with 3,000 people right now.
Yeah,
there's a lot more to work with. Right?
That's right. So with 3,000 kids at the Aman Tech Center right now, the ambition is that just this campus, we should be able to get them to 5,000. And our estimation is that the cost per year would be about $1,800 per student. And the idea here is, of course, that the government is beginning to take note of what Aman Tech is. And the potential that we see for scale is actually replicating Aman Tech institutes all over Pakistan. And the ambition is 1,000 of them in a country of 185 million people, where 70% of the population is under the age of 30. 1,000 vocational training schools would perhaps make a dent.
So what's your biggest constraint to doing that?
So I think it's engagement with government, because they have the resources. They also actually have lots of brick and mortar that can be taken up by us and put in the quality of the work, the blueprint. We're in partnership with City and Guilds and GIZ of Germany. So and the soft skills part is what we want to keep embedding into everything. So on the one hand, that to me seems like a pathway. But we're also getting inquiries now out of other countries, like Algeria's asking us to come and set up Aman Tech over there, because youth opportunity has to be an upskilled opportunity, and not everybody is going to make it to colleges and universities, and perhaps not everybody should. And so this is about taking not just, so the one aspect is vocational training and scaling it. The ultimate goal is to take vocational training and embed it into the secondary schooling system, because the secondary schooling system in Pakistan in particular, and other countries like Pakistan, actually has a much lower enrollment rate. And the reason for that is people are not seeing the benefit of that. So if you have skills training happening in there, then parents are more keen to have their children go to school, because otherwise the opportunity cost of going and working is a hard one to trade off. So I see vocational training both as something that will widen the opportunity for young people to not just have to go to universities, and you're not just leaders by doing that, but you're actually being able to, and depending on that phase of life where you may not want to be so academically oriented. And the Germans and the Swiss have done this exceedingly well.
Right.
So, in Pakistan, we're trying to build for better, because when many things are broken, why not take the best ideas, blend them together, put in the soft skills. Some of these soft skills are not even there in our best schools and colleges. Yeah. So I think there are many things happening. You're scaling, but you're also infecting the system with new standards and qualities.
Yeah, I think you're all doing that in some ways. So one of the things I find interesting is that we always think of leadership and development and skill gaps with youth. And I'm sure there's someone in this room that's twice Joseph's age that might have less developed leadership skills than Joseph, even possibly. So what are some of the things, Pamela and Fred, that you think you're teaching in your programs or at your school that are ageless in some ways, that are relevant for anyone sitting in here that still has a lofty dream and wants to achieve it?
Oh, I gotta say, I'm really tired of the idea of leadership. It would be so nice to just have some really great followers. And you've all seen that wonderful little YouTube video of whatever his name is, who gets out there and says, leadership is overrated. It really is the first follower. I think that one of the things that we try to emphasize more than anything is that leadership is about humility. Leadership is about listening. Leadership is about empathy. Leadership is about, inspiring. And I think that it's very, very difficult when you come to a place like Oxford, which is, got such brand recognition, and you're doing an MBA where it's all about you, to, kind of focus on what are the real qualities, very much what you're talking about in terms of the soft skills. That, to me, is a really important point. And I think that through some of the projects that we do here at Oxford that we've developed in the MBA school really are tackling those issues in terms of, entrepreneurial projects that build teamwork. The, leadership for impact is much more about, again, leading in terms of teamwork. And we don't do enough of that.
Fred, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, but I'll say that one of the things that we do at the Academy is really encourage our young leaders to work in teams and to collaborate. And I think that in doing so, it gives you an opportunity to really ask for feedback from your peers and people that you're working with about how you are coming across, how you're leading. And I think that's a lesson that you need to keep applying to yourself as you grow. In fact, that's the only way that you grow as a leader. And constantly reflecting and asking for feedback and using that to change the ways that you do things. And the other thing that I think is relevant from our philosophy with the Academy is this notion of practice. That constantly practicing what it means to be a leader and think about how the practice you're getting is preparing you to do something bigger and bigger. So if I think about my own example, when I was 18, my mother had started a school in Botswana. And my dad had just passed away, and she had 4 kids to look after, so she put me in charge as the headmaster of the school. And she said she could keep running, working as a teacher. And it was a small school at the time, 35 kids. But that gave me the practice to 7 years later, when I was 25, to think about creating the African Leadership Academy. And then that has given me the practice to now, and that, at the Academy, we're looking at creating 6,000 leaders for Africa. So going from 35 to 6,000. And now I'm thinking about creating this, I'm working on this university system that's going to create 3 million leaders for Africa, right? And how do you think about constantly reflecting back on what you're learning and the unique opportunities and experiences that you've had? How does that prepare you to do something bigger and bigger on a larger scale for the world? And that is something that I don't think you can ever stop doing.
You're a great example of that. So let's invite, we have not much time left, actually. Let's invite our young leaders back on stage, and we have time for questions if people have them. This is being live streamed, so make sure you wait until a microphone gets to you before you ask your question. I see someone right on the edge there. You guys scoot in, it's okay.
Hi, I'm, is this on? Yeah, I'm Janet Longmore with Digital Opportunity Trust. And my questions are for Misan and Jimena. In particular, I thought all of you were fabulous. And we work with thousands of young leaders. And I'm particularly interested in the role models that so many young women have become. And I'm encouraged by their talent. So in your journeys to date, have you found any challenges as a young woman, or have you just plowed right through it, or what does that mean to you, and do you feel that you are role models for other young women, social entrepreneurs or young leaders?
Ahsan?
Thank you. I think challenges in the doing business in Nigeria, doing business in Africa, and the context of just being a assertive woman. I've learned a lot from that experience. I think treating people the way you expect to be treated, with that courtesy, with that respect, regardless of what you're getting back, has been something that I've grown in over the last year and a half. So people will write you off, but I do really believe at that human interaction level, I want people to connect with me because of what's in here and not because of what's on a CV. So I will hold that trump card as the very last thing I use to sort of end a conversation and hope that that will sell and connect. But really it's connecting with people just because of what's in here. And usually you find that if you offer that leaf of saying, I'm going to treat you with courtesy and respect, this is the idea that I have, can you connect with it before you try to throw out, oh, these are all the accolades and the things that I've accomplished and all the scale and blah, blah, blah. Because humility in the African context, I mean, people will humble you. They don't care if you've gone to Harvard. They don't care if you've gone anywhere. They will put you in your place. I mean, one of my favorite stories is one of our first set of students. There's a lot of skepticism in Nigeria because of the brand and reputation we have internationally around fraudulent activities. We are actually the most skeptical and hardest to be fooled. But I remember this first class of students all sort of being very anxious. Like, this woman said she's going to not sleep until she gets us jobs. And someone stood up in the class and he said, oh, but you know, I Googled her and it seems she went to this Harvard place, which I've heard of. So maybe she's not going to steal our $60 and run off with it. And maybe she'll actually do what she says. And they all looked at her and they looked at him and said, what are you talking about? Please, those are the biggest crooks, for all we care. We don't. So Nigerians, Africans will humble you if you think that you're bringing all of that to the table. And then just the last thing is really around knowing your integrity, knowing your moral compass, knowing what you will stand for and what you will not stand for. There are lots of things that we want to do with the government in a big way, but we're not going to compromise on our moral compass. And so until we learn how to do it and we have the right contacts in there, it's been a challenge as well. So in terms of role models, looking across at just finding role models in every interaction, really looking at people for what they have.
Thanks, Misan. Any other questions?
Well, yeah, you want me just to follow that on? In the same way, I think that role models, we can become role models, are very important. And I don't, the way we are identifying or learning to become role models is by the people that we are working with. Just by being, by those connections and being motivated by the innovation and by the passion that the people that we work with are working is how we're becoming. Yes,
this question is for all of you, and I'm curious if this might be kind of challenging, but if you could give kind of a one-sentence answer to one thing that you look for in your mentors, or that you had in a mentor that you've already had, so that people in the room that are thinking about mentoring us young people can kind of hear what are the things that are really valuable in those mentors. But it's for everyone, because I'm curious what mentors you guys had when you were starting out as well.
Let's take 2 other questions too, and then people can answer a couple of them right here.
Mandeep. You hear me?
No.
No. Should I just shout?
We can hear you. Talk into it.
Yep. Okay. Along the same vein, I was wondering what organization or project within an organization has empowered you the most, so that we who are trying to empower others can see what's been most beneficial within your trajectories.
Great. And then one more here.
My name is Simon Bell, I work at the World Bank. So going beyond empowering just you four and actually empowering the youth of Africa or the youth of Latin America, we have a global problem of unemployment and it's falling disproportionately high on young people. It's very clear that governments are not going to employ young people. The private sector is failing at that job. So it seems that entrepreneurship in all its forms, social entrepreneurship, any entrepreneurship is what's going to be incredibly important for young people. But school systems don't teach people business skills. They don't teach people soft skills, particularly in the developing world. This is a serious issue. But there's a huge benefit to this. Young firms are known to employ young people. So if we can get more young people establishing new young firms, we're going to get more people in jobs. How do we do this? How do we get there? This is critical for the world.
Okay. So does anyone want to jump in on any of those three?
I'll jump in on the mentor and your question. I think mentorship is a two-way street. This idea, and it's very much the same thing along empowerment. You don't empower people, they empower themselves. And I think that the same thing with mentorship. The best, I have always shied away from that because I learn more from my students than they would ever learn from me. So I think that that's a real two-way street. So when I look at those, I've had people come and say, will you be my mentor? I'm like, no, you know, I will have a conversation with you and we'll learn from each other. And I think that in terms of empowerment, the most empowering organizations are not organizations, they're experiences. I mean, all of us have had our road to Damascus moments where we need to expose ourselves to things that make us incredibly uncomfortable because we're not used to it. And that is a very empowering situation to be in if we are able to come through that. Totally agree with your observation in terms of entrepreneurship. There are organizations such as the ones that are here represented, as well as Junior Achievement, et cetera. Where are we going to go with this? You know, there are so many young people who want to go and be their own boss and be their own, you know, set up their ventures. How are we supporting them? And I think that there is a movement now to do that, but it's just beginning.
No? Yeah.
Yeah, so is this working?
Sure.
Okay, great. Sometimes I yell, so I just want to check. I used to be a rowing coach, so I have to make sure I'm not yelling. So for me, one, I have three that I feel are empowering, have been empowering to me and hopefully transcend to many people. One is tough love. Our name is Young Love, but tough love in the sense of things that are hard to hear but very important. So there's one statement that a mentor of mine said to me, I think it was 6 years ago, and I still remember it to this day. I was writing an essay and like a mini proposal, and there was one comment that said, "You are no Edgar Allan Poe." And I was like, okay, I'm not an Edgar Allan Poe. But then there was really great feedback after. And you know, not easy to say, it was kind of funny too, but very memorable, tough to hear and important. And then eventually I edited it into something that was worth something. And then that's on tough love, and there's many examples of that. Another one, and I think a very complementary piece, is trust. And so, you know, once you give guidance, then trusting the young person to take that or not take that and do what they think is right and experience it. And so, for example, our first grant as Young Love, we worked for 6 months with no funding. Was just a $20K grant. And it's, you know, here you go, we love your idea and good luck. And we're here if you need advice. Then the third one is experience, actually doing something. So again, not just looking at a textbook. So for me, one of the things that's enabled me to be more successful and happier with the work that I'm doing is I actually started a smaller NGO when I was at MIT. And that experience, I carry so many lessons from that. I don't carry a lot of the econometrics classes with me to my work, but
yes, you do.
Maybe I shouldn't say that. But yes, that experience of actually doing something is really important.
Ahsan, it looked like you wanted to talk to you.
So I just wanted to say a couple of things quickly about, you know, jobs. Jobs are created by entrepreneurs. We understand that, and I think in every initiative, for example, that even in the vocational training, about 20 to 25% of the students or the graduates are encouraged to actually start their own businesses. But Junior Achievement, which is a program that we've also launched in Pakistan, as well as, am I forgetting this? So Teach for Pakistan is the other one. But no, Junior Achievement, in the name of Injaz, is actually collaborating with the Vocational Training Institute to give those skills. I think one of the earlier speakers in one of the earlier sessions talked about how important it is for us to not try and reinvent the wheel, but to actually back a lot of these programs and connect them. So I think there's a lot of work happening in entrepreneurship, but it needs to be taken to the right places and connected and brought to people that are, you know, in the throes of wanting to take charge of their lives.
I think that's right. And that's exactly what we're trying to do at the Skoll World Forum. So thank you all for being part of the session today. I think this session is about dreams as much as youth. And I don't know at what age people decide it's frivolous to say, I want to change the world, but clearly everyone here still does, no matter what age they are. I still do. For me, that's through the portfolio and fellows that Malago supports. But I hope everyone on this stage keeps dreaming bigger. And I hope that for everyone in the audience, too. So thank you for joining us today.